Today, what we want to do is go over some situations, go over some different ways that we train different positions while also kind of infusing that next layer. Okay, second base. Starting off with nobody on, nobody out positioning.
I prefer to start behind the baseline, probably, I don't know, 5 steps. Everyone's different depending on the hitter, but I like to move back because I don't want to cut off my range. If I'm baseline, I'm not able to, have a lot of range, so I move back. I start pretty much in between, right in between second and first, because I need to be able to get to first if there's a bunt.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, I guess. I have this ongoing debate with people about where our toes should be facing. Should they be facing or square with the baseline or facing the hitter? This is a question for you. What's your preference?
Let me see. I don't even know if I'd be probably a little bit more towards the batter because I'm got to see her. I feel like this would be tough looking this way if the batter's a little bit to my left. What do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind straight?
I don't totally understand. I think this was something that was lost in translation because one of my players said, "Oh, so and so told me to do this." And I'm like, "Let's try it the other way and see what you like better." Because I'm never going to say, "Hey, don't do that," because this person said. I will never ever say that. But their thing was, I believe, like your path to be able to cover like a steal, and this was over at shortstop. But I think the same thing would apply for what we're talking about.
With that, I would, sorry, not to interrupt you, I would say with your feet, if I'm thinking about it, I'm more towards the hitter, but that all goes back to if we all do, if you do a prep step or whatever, a little pre-pitch movement, when you're landing, you should be light on your feet so you can go whichever direction. Instead of flat-footed, then it's really tough to, get angled to where you need to go.
Yeah. My thought is always, you play the hitter, not the situation. Right. You play the hitter, not the pitch. I got in trouble a lot in travel ball for that because it's like, oh, cool, we're giving signs. I'm showing the outfield that it's a curveball and a righty, so I'm like over here, but this hitter is a pull hitter, so she's never going to hit it to my glove side. So, yeah, it kind of all goes together. But, yes, nobody on, nobody out positioning. We are partial to having our toes facing the hitter because we're playing the hitter. 2 out positioning for a second baseman. To me, it doesn't really change all that much.
No, I would definitely behind the baseline. You could probably even go back a little bit more because usually they're not bunting. So you don't need to get to first base. Now, don't take it out of the equation, but I would usually go back maybe a couple more steps so I had more range. And at second base, you can get away with going back more because it's not as far of a throw than it is like at third or short.
Yes, and that is just something to note. In general, second base, in my head, like if you're a coach watching this and you're like, who should play second, who should play short? You have to have a fast person here because you're always sprinting to first, sprinting to second, getting in line for a cut, something.
Yep.
If you have a decision between 2 fast people, maybe you pick someone with not as crazy good of an arm because it's not super necessary here, but arm angles for sure are, understanding that. Slapper positioning.
So slapper, I'm still behind the baseline because I don't want to cut my range off too much, but I'm maybe like a step or 2 just because I want to make sure that they're not going to lay anything in front of me. But yeah, so with, normal hitter, I'll be where I normally am, like 4 or 5 steps behind.
Runner on first. Obviously, we're thinking now this is where we're sprinting across, needing to cover potentially a bunt. If it is a slapper and she stays, her feet are moving, but she stays true to a slap, we're going to have to move and cover second base because there's another situation where we have to still cover second base even on a bunt.
It's if the first baseman stays back. Yes. They have the first baseman stay back, then the second baseman will cover the bunt because they have the shortstop in and over on that 5-6 hole.
This is where it gets incredibly difficult. When we don't actually have people out here and we get to that depends word again because, again, it really depends on where you're putting your first baseman, and that's going to determine exactly what your second baseman does. Okay, runner on first, bunt coverages. So the very basic bunt coverage, let's not talk about slappers. We're just talking about there's a regular bunter, sacrifice bunt. No tricks about it. She's bunting. Second base, sprints over here, covers first base. Let's talk about footwork around the bag.
So when I played second, I felt the easiest way to get to first was I wanted to be behind the baseline, because as I'm going in, I'm running in, I'm like taking this straight angle, and then I'm turning, and then I prefer my left foot on the bag. So then my right foot's gonna go out. And the only reason I don't love to come in and set up like a normal first baseman, which is my left foot goes out, I'd never had enough time. You know, in a perfect world, yeah, you want to turn your body and go out. It was always bang, bang. I was usually getting over there, left foot hits while I was catching the ball.
And also from the angle that you're getting the throws, if it's from the pitcher or whoever is fielding the ground ball, you're getting the ball in front of the pitcher's mound, and that's actually a really great target to keep the ball on the inside part of the base. Because if she's receiving the ball to her glove side, you're leading her into the runner, and that's going to take her arm off, and then we don't have a second baseman, and then we got to start all the way over. So slapper bunts, what's the difference here? And this is the depends word.
Yeah,
right?
but I felt like this was the hardest thing to figure out how to set up if there was a slapper up with a runner on first, because normally a slapper, you know, because we don't always know if they're going to bunt. They're usually hitting it to the left side usually. So you need to make sure you're getting to second in order to get that runner. And again, usually, depending on who the runner is at first, if a slapper is up, they hit it to the left side of the field, you want to get this out, because usually you have more time here than you do at first base. Mm-hmm. So it was tough because I still had to play middle. I would play up just a little bit, so it was a little bit quicker to get to each bag. You just got to be really quick on your feet.
Yeah, so this is the argument to have the first baseman back, because then you just give the second baseman freedom to just be like, all right, we're going to just go over here. But you could potentially give up outs, because this runner has the head start, right? Right when the ball is released, the person has a head start, almost straight stealing to a certain extent. And then you give up that big blind area of this first baseman isn't crashing. So,
which I took, and as a slapper, like we know you talked about it, I took advantage of that.
Yeah.
Not every slapper is good at bunting down the first base line. So, you know, again, you know, at travel ball, you don't know the scouting report on all the players. But like, let's say you're playing school ball and you're playing the same girls over and over. You know who is a power slapper, or, you know, is someone who's just like a little dinky hit. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to play your first baseman back, you got to be sure that they're not going to be bunting in that area.
Yes, and then if you do have kind of the understanding play, which is, hey, on a slap, second baseman's always covering second. On a bunt, first baseman will go. What happens on one of those swinging bunts? Like, you don't really know. And I think anytime that happened with my infield, it's like if she's not coming to a stop with her bat and she's not trying to get parallel, that's a bunt. If it's swing through, that's just going to be played as a slap.
And we'll get to the communication part, but that's also where that communication comes into play, because there's times a first baseman might just be like frozen and they're like, crap, I'm not gonna be able to get that. And then they're like, okay, well, we just gotta leave it. I'm gonna stay back. And they'll be taught like, I got it. Yes. So like, even though it was a bunt, first baseman just didn't crash enough time, so she's just gonna stay back, and you just gotta communicate.
Yes. I mean, communication is the link between all of this. I mean, you do have like 2.8 seconds, so it's not a lot, but that's when getting to know your teammates and understanding that piece is huge.
And just remember, not everything. Yes, you have plays designed, but we were talking earlier. Every game, every inning is going to be different. There's going to be times your first baseman forgot, or I don't know, they just didn't. They're like, oh, I'm not going to get there, and they moved back. We didn't design that, but you talked and got the out.
All right, picks and steals. So second base. This is probably one of the hardest things, right? So picks at first, and then when would you ever consider covering at second? Picks at first.
Picks as a second baseman. Again, when I played, it was usually a pitch out. So as the pitcher was going back, I was creeping just a little bit, because I didn't want to give it away to the the first base coach. So I was creeping a little bit. As the pitcher was releasing, I'm coming behind the bag, so the runner couldn't see me, along with the coach. And then I usually It was kind of, it depends on the throw.
Depends.
I don't love to straddle ever. I don't know. I feel restricted. If I had enough time, I want to say I was in front, but I feel like because I was coming from behind, I was usually straddled. But again, I think it depends on that throw.
Yeah, and just the timing.
Yeah.
You never quite are in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. But I do remember you got to take that big loop. And granted, sometimes they're going to see you, but what you don't want is to go straight in because that coach is going to see you. But if you can kind of creep, play around, get all the way behind, so you can kind of fake out that coach and the run. I mean, the runner's going to be looking at home anyways, but.
Yeah, and that's when you definitely have to have communication with catcher. It's going to be pitch out.
Yeah.
They've got to have a communication first. Maybe it's coming from the dugout and they're calling it, but that all has to happen.
Yeah.
It's not just you doing it
right. Yeah.
by yourself. Steals at second. This can happen if there's a slapper. Shortstop stays home. Second base has this and then also has to cover this, and this is why I don't play second base. My feet were not quick enough. So,
yeah. I mean, I just don't love to straddle. So I was always right in this front corner with my right foot. The reason I don't love to straddle, I just feel if it is not perfectly to me at my chest, facing this way now. If it's not perfectly to me at my chest, I can't really move because this runner's coming in at me. Now, if I'm in front of the bag, I feel if it is up the line, I can still catch and tag that runner. A lot of people I get all the time, if you're set up in the front, they're going to hook slide. Well, I always say, remember, this is where they need to get to. So they can hook slide all they want, they still need to come to the bag, So, and I always say, just don't chase them. You got to go straight down to that bag.
Picks at second.
Picks.
This almost never happens. Also,
Yeah.
like if you're a runner and you're that far off that you don't notice the catcher throwing at you, then you should be out, honestly, or delay to third.
Yeah,
right?
and I think it was with this, I was going straight in. And I want to say for here, if I remember correctly, I was straddling just because the runner is going that where's, off the bag going to third. So I didn't need to really be in front. But gosh, it's hard. I hate to say I did one way or the other. I really think it just depended on how I got there and how quick I got there.
Okay, so in general, what's second baseman's responsibility? This is a position that I think second base is the hardest infield position, just based on all the different places that you have to be. But if I were to say you are in charge of this base, I wouldn't know what to say. Because I think, again, second base, you have to do a lot of things. You have a lot of responsibilities, but you're not in charge of covering a certain base.
I would say that if I had to pick, you're not just in charge of second. You've got first and second because there's so many times you have to cover first.
Yeah. So, like, head on a swivel, like...
light on your feet.
It's tough over here.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done. But I know you talked about this in the beginning, don't already have it in your head, okay, she's going to bunt, I'm going this way. It really has to be play the ball first, then react.